This is a demonstration of problem A4. And in this problem, you'll see that I added a tab for A4 along with my other tabs. And I've pasted the problem into the worksheet in this little box and made sure the box is the right size. So we're asked to solve it in Excel, which we'll do here. Good practice in Excel. A social psychologist gave a survey to 8 active members of a small political action group about how many hours they put into the group's activities each week. The results were as follows, and here are the numbers. Compute the mean, median, variance, and standard deviation. Explain what the results mean to a person who has never had a course in statistics. So let's go ahead and get these numbers. I don't want to type these in. I'm very likely to make a mistake when I do typing like this. So I'm going to do a quick little trick that I've shown you several times before to avoid having to write numbers. So I copied those numbers and I'm going to paste them here, but they're not useful because they're all in one cell you can see up here. So what we have to do is get them into separate cells. I'm going to go to Data and use the function Text to Columns and tell Excel that these are numbers that are separated by commas. And in fact, I'm also going to tell it that it's separated by a space because of this word and then it will separate that too. Then I'm just going to go to Next and Finish. And there we have these numbers all nicely separated into their own cells. I'm going to move this one right here so that I can paste it. And now I can grab all of these, copy them, and put them where I want them in a vertical column. So I'm going to left click. I'm going to hit the transpose button and we're good to go. Now I can get rid of these and continue on shaping my problem. And in order to make sense of the data, I always want to have a heading. This is the heading X, which means scores. And I want to list my participants so that I remember what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about members of a group, so I can put member 1, and I can put member 2, and ask Excel to do the rest of the work for me. So I'm going to do that little function that I've shown you before of taking the columns that I want the pattern to be continued, making my cursor hover over that little box in the corner and dragging it down. Now all those are written out. And I also have the benefit of knowing that my N is going to be 8, that I have 8 members. So what I'm going to need to solve this problem, I'm going to need to know the number in the sample. I'll put an N. I'm going to need to know the mean. That's represented by M. I'm going to need to know the sum of squares, represented by SS. The variance, represented here by VAR, and the standard deviation with SD, and I'm also asked about the median. So that's what I need for the official answer to this question. So let's go ahead and calculate these. I can tell N, I can fill this in right away because I've counted them already and it's 8. I can calculate mean by taking, and let's write out the formula, M equals the sum of all the scores divided by N. So let's go ahead and write equals sum. And in parentheses, let's select all the scores. I'll place my cursor in the first one and open it up so it goes down to the bottom. And here I'm going to write the whole formula in 1. So I'm going to go up into the formula bar, put my closing parenthesis, and divide by N. I'll just write the 8 in. We have a mean of 34, which if I eyeball it, seems like it's probably right. And if I highlight what I have, it says, yep, it added all of those up for me and divided by 8, which is what I wanted it to do. So I've just checked my formula. Next, we need the sum of squares. The sum of squares is the sum of all the deviations, X minus M, those are deviations, squared. So let's go ahead and calculate the deviations. I'll write that up here, deviations, which is X minus M. And let's go ahead and write equals. Let's get the X, the first X. and subtract the mean. And I just need to make sure and stabilize the row italic cell. I always want it to stay in row 10 because that's where the mean is. So I do that by putting a $sign before the 10. And so now I have a negative 15. Does this look right? 19 minus 34 is negative 15. Yes, that looks right. I can also check my formula by placing my cursor up on top in the formula bar. And in blue, I can see the blue is the 19, C9. And in red, I see the 34, and I see that they subtracted, so that I've checked the formula and it looks right. So let's paste that down. I copy it and paste it down. Control V. Next, I'm going to figure out the squared deviations. Call it squared deviations. And this is going to be the column that we're going to add up. So I'm going to make it bold by hitting Control B. And the squared deviations is just equal. Here's the deviation, negative 15. Remember, 1 has a score that's 15 points lower than the mean. And I'm going to type the up little caret and the 2 for squaring. So 225 for that member's squared deviations. I can copy it using Control C, paste it down using Control V, and here we are with our squared deviations. Now I can calculate our sum of squares, which is simply adding up all those squared deviations. So adding up the squared deviations equals sum, opening parenthesis, and let's select all of those. And total it, we get 576. Our variance is sum of squares divided by n. So let's type equals, let's click on the sum of squares and divide by n. Enter, and we get 72 for the variance, which seems about right. We can always look at it, and we did select the correct cells. I can tell by the blue that's highlighted and the pink that's highlighted. Next, our standard deviation is the square root of the variance. So let's go in equals SQRT, and let's click on variance and hit enter. And our standard deviation is 8.48. And the median that we can see, I think what I'll do to figure out the median is I'll sort these. I'll select all 4 columns, and I will go to data. I'll click on sort and tell it what column to sort by. In this case, it thinks that 19 is a header, but it's not. So let's uncheck this box. I want to see all of these selected. And so now we can tell it to sort by column C. And here we go. Now they're sorted. If I look, I can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. These 2 numbers are in the middle. So I need to figure out the mean or average of those 2 numbers in order to find out the median. So I'll type in equals, let's sum them up, equals the sum, and then opening parenthesis, I'll select these 2 numbers. Whoops. It's going to not let me select them very easily. I'll write them in 33 and 40 and divide by 2. And we find out 36.5 is the number just in the middle of these 2. That is the median. So now what can we talk about with this problem? We have a really big standard deviation. That's something I noticed right away relative to these numbers. And we have a wide range. So I think I'm going to be talking about a couple of those things. So let me get a text box in there for writing about this. So I think I will describe this down here. And so I'm going to say that on average, individuals in the Political Action Committee put definitely want to relate this to And our mean is 34 hours. That's a lot of others. 34 hours per week volunteering on the committee. However, the extent to which individuals volunteered varied quite a bit. By more than 8 hours, by more than 8 hours on average. In other words, one member worked as few as 19 hours, while another worked 44 hours. Now I'm going to put the range. For a range of, what's 44 minus 19? That would be 25 of 25. This suggests that some individuals may have greater interest in the political action group, or perhaps more likely that some members simply have more time to volunteer than others who may have jobs or children. Let's see if there's anything else we can say. I think I'm going to talk about the difference between the median and the mean. Because the median and mean were different, and because of the outlier, we would say that this distribution had a negative skew. Let me open this up here so we can see it. That this distribution had a negative skew, or a tail that extended into the lower number of hours. This represents that a number of members, n equals 4, worked 40 to 44 hours, while the remaining members volunteer hours varied quite a bit more. And I'm going to change this. Instead of saying a number of members, which sounds sort of silly, I'm going to put that half of the members, n equals 4, worked 40 to 44 hours, while the remaining members' volunteer hours were more varied. Whoops. And ranged from 19 to 33 hours. And might even draw a little skewed distribution to show this to this person who's not understanding much about statistics. And that's the end of this demonstration. I hope you find it helpful.